You mentioned micro betting and in-play markets, and we mentioned the NBA. A couple of things have been happening over the last week or so. I don't know if you've heard about it.
Some Italians were involved there too.
Some Italians from New Jersey and New York, as usual.
The Business of Betting podcast is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. 4 out of the top 5 U.S. operators personalize player experiences with Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/businessofbetting. And if you like what you see, you will get your first month free.
Welcome back to the Business of Betting podcast. I'm Jeff Edelstein, senior analyst over at ingame.com. I am joined today by, I haven't even talked to him more than 2 minutes so far. I'm about to call him the most interesting man in this industry. His name is Francesco Borgosano. I nailed it. I know I nailed that last name. He is the CEO. He is the founder of Huddle. And I got to tell you right off the bat, the first thing that jumps out at me, Francesco, is most people I meet in this industry have, I don't want to say the same origin story, but more or less, is, they were interested in gambling a little bit. They did a little bit of this. They did a little bit of that. And then they found themselves in the industry. You do not fit that mold, right?
Yes, correct. Yes, you're right. You're right. And before we start, I want to congratulate on the pronunciation of my last name. I'm very surprised. So well done on that.
Well, listen, again, I'm born and raised in New Jersey. I am an honorary Italian. Jews and Italians, I don't know if you figured this out yet. And that, you're in New York, Jews and we're the same. There's no difference. Jews and Italians, we're all the same. Your origin story here is kind of bonkers for this industry. You grew up in Sicily, yeah. I mean, let's start at the beginning. So you're growing up in Sicily, and what's going on out there?
Yeah, no, actually, you're totally right. And growing up, I never really thought about sports betting as a job because I'm Italian. So growing up in Italian, when I was really young, actually, there wasn't a free market; it was a monopoly. So you were only allowed to bet with a national lottery and bookmakers. Growing up, I wasn't really interested in betting at all, but I was always like a huge sport fan. Football is, of course, almost a religion in Italy. Growing up, watching football, going to the stadium, all that. And my academic part was very different. So I studied physics. So I majored in physics, like undergraduate, graduate, did my PhD. And really, I was set up on an academic career. But I had I would call it disappointed, but I was a bit frustrated with my experience as a scientist when I was doing my PhD, because again, I grew up with this idea of, sharing information, sharing knowledge, this making world a better place with science and all that. And I ended up in a project that was financed by a private company. So really the focus was about commercializing and monetizing my research. After a few years in that environment, I was like, why am I even doing this? Like, if the goal is just making money, so why am I at the university? I should just go and try to make money. And I got married, and so my wife was like, yes, you should definitely try to make money. So when I moved to London, it was like, this is not a great time for the financial sector. And it was like, have you ever considered sports betting? And I was actually very surprised. I was like, what would I do in the sports betting industry? Like, I'm a physics, like I studied math and computer science. And it was like, well, you'll be building predictive models. And for me, that was like an eye opener. I was like, wait, I can do math and sports and I get paid? And it was like, yes, you basically go there and you build models for football, any other sports. And I was like, yeah, sign me up. So I got my first job as a quant analyst at Ladbrokes, because at the time Ladbrokes was developing a proprietary technology and trading platform. Since then, I've never really looked back, because I said I've always been a huge sport fan, and for me this was like a perfect mix. I would get to geek, so doing math and computer science and watch sport. I wasn't very lucky, I would say, because my first project was on cricket. So I had to do like a full immersion on cricket, watching cricket games for like weeks. So that was not a great start, but eventually I got to start working on interesting sports. So I don't regret the decision.
As you were building your resume in this business, did you find other people with similar backgrounds, or not particularly?
No, I think it's changing over time. I would say when I started, the most common path was from trading. If you were a trader and maybe you major in stats or math, you would usually transition to a quant role because the two roles are the two, I would say, most adjacent. I would say when computer science and AI and machine learning started becoming like a standard in our industry, now it's not uncommon to get mathematician and STEM graduate directly from the get-go into a quant role.
Right. Now, when you were going back to, you said that your first research, your first job or project out of school, kind of disappointed you. Can you speak at all to that, or like what? Maybe not name the companies, but at least like what the research was about.
Yeah, I think what disappointed me, I said, was like as a Mexican growing up, I had this, if you want, like romantic view of what science should be. Like I imagine a world where you will share information and you will share know-how with other research team, with other universities, just to try and get better results. In the end, I found that even within the academic environment, there was a lot of like silos and competition, and people was not really freely sharing their results or freely sharing their knowledge just to try and get grants or just to try and get an edge against others. So for me, that was kind of I found almost like if you want, a betrayal of what I consider should be like an ethical approach to science, which again, I can see that why that happening in the private sector. I think in the private sector, it's fine. You try to monetize, but my research was funded by the University of Heidelberg. So I didn't like that a university would prioritize money over scientific results.
All right, I'm gonna drill down just one more time on this. Looking back, when you were dreaming of this world where the information sharing and science, as a beautiful thing, what types of science were you interested in?
So my project was actually sponsored by a pharmaceutical company, so sponsored by and I was doing research on cancer. So we were doing research on eye field magnetic resonance, because one of the biggest goal in research is to try and detect cancer early on. So having like an early detection really increased the chance of survival for the patient down the line. So we were doing basically research on how to optimize and how to improve MRI and scanning on early stage cancer. So that was the goal.
All right, so I'm going to ask you this. Now, a friend of mine in the business, he goes by the name of Captain Jack Andrews. I'm sure you're familiar with him. One of his, he comes to a class that I teach once a year, and one of the points that he makes about being a professional gambler is that one of the drawbacks is that you don't really add much to society, right? Where it's kind of a lonesome solo gig, and all you're trying to do is make money. And here you are, and we're going to get to your business because it's a fascinating business. You are making, theoretically, the world better for gamblers and sportsbooks by your product, right? But compared to like curing cancer, I'm not sure. Are there nights where you wake up at 3 a.m. and be like, oh, yeah, maybe I made the wrong call here?
Yes, I would say for sure. Sometimes I get to think like I would have enjoyed, I would say, a career where I could have felt, I would say, a natural and personal reward. So yes, from time to time, I think about it. But then, as I said, and maybe it's just my experience, there was a very not tough time, but I was very scarred by that experience.
Of course.
That was kind of like, okay, but maybe that word just doesn't exist. Like in the end of the day, as like buyer doesn't really care about cancer. They only care how much they can charge them for the MRI. But yes, for sure, from time to time, I think about my career path.
Well, I'll tell you what. I live down the road from the Institute for Advanced Study over there in Princeton. So if you ever want to take a walk over there, maybe I could slip you in. They won't know. You'll come for afternoon tea. It'll be a delight. I'll tell everyone you're Einstein's nephew or something.
Thank you on that.
All right. there's other things about your life that I want to talk about, but let's hit pause on that. Let's talk about the business, obviously, because that is the title of our podcast here. So give us the elevator pitch. Tell us exactly what you guys are doing over there and how you've grown and what the business looks like today.
Yeah, I think the elevator pitch is that Huddle is a premium odds feed provider and trading service provider. We've been in the business now for 5 years. So I founded Huddle in 2020. And myself with the rest of the founding team, we all come from the betting industry. So we all come with an operator background. So we work for like major operators. So really, when we started the company, our vision was like, what can we do to make the life of our partners easier when it comes to trading and odds making? So really, that's what drives us every day. And in the way we build product, we put the needs of the operators first. And of course, for, I would say, what I call sportsbook first operators, trading is still the core function in the business. So we try to help them optimize their margin. We try to help them improve the uptime to drive more volume. We try out our partners in leveraging automation to reduce their operational costs. So we try to, as I said, be really a genuine partner to our customers and try to build solutions that really help them.
Now, since you started the company, or actually, even let's roll back. Even before you started the company, and we'll just talk about the American audience here for a moment. What's changed the most as far as what the operators want from you? I guess as the years have ticked by here.
Yeah, and I think actually you talked about the American audience because that really, I would say, 2018 was really a pivotal moment in the industry. Not only about, I would say, the size of the market, but I think just in terms of the audience and the expectation product-wise. Growing up in Italy, in a country where you have a national monopoly, which is still the case, the betting was always like a very transactional experience. So we're always like, yeah, you're gonna pick one or two winners and wait for the end of the game. When PASPA was repealed and the US opened up, really the expectation changed. So I think in the US, there is a strong interconnection between betting and entertainment. And also the fact that also media and betting, I would say the betting behavior really followed the media narrative that they are around players, around exciting plays. So that what really changed over the past 5 to 10 years, I'll say. Now the focus is very much toward player props and micro markets and in-play betting because, as I said, especially in the US, betting is just seen as something that augments the excitement and the entertainment of the sport events. Something that in Europe we didn't have, and still even today is not necessarily the primary focus for an operator.
I was going to ask, has the American style of bettor trickled into other markets?
I would say the NBA is probably the only exception. I think the NBA is truly the only, I would say, global league. I think the NBA is really the only league that everyone follows globally everywhere. So I would say that's the only league where you see the same thing. People, regardless if they're Europe, Asia, Africa, US, people wants to bet on players. People wants to, follow their live games and see the excitement of the NBA. So I think NBA is probably the only exception, but other sports are still pretty much tied to the old way of experiencing the product.
I'm sure Adam Silver would like to hear that they're popular on all 7 continents, probably. You mentioned micro betting and in-play markets, and we mentioned the NBA. A couple of things have been happening over the last week or so. I don't know if you've heard about it.
Some Italians were involved there too.
Some Italians from New Jersey and New York, as usual. There's been some talk, obviously, about limiting prop markets, limiting in-play, limiting micro betting. And, I fall mostly on the libertarian side of all this, where, like, if you can build it, let's build it. Let's let it roll. Let's let it go. But at the same time, I can see the other side where we're taking like these pitch by pitch bets or the next possession bets, and we're at best turning it into a carnival game, at worst turning it into something that's potentially when Fat Tony and crew get their hands on it. Where does that leave you guys as somebody who's just all, you're just providing the data, you're just providing the feed. Where does it leave you guys? How do you handle that?
My answer is twofold. I think on one end, I agree with you in the sense that definitely this type of live betting and micro proposition expose operators to that type of risk because they really are a good fit for that purpose. Because if you're a player or someone that has like ill intention, you can throw away a pitch and still win the game. So you feel less worried. It's not like match fixing. It's like, okay, I'm just going to throw a pitch away or maybe miss a free throw and I can still win the game. So it doesn't impact the organization. So I think it can extend for sure the type of proposition can open to that type of exposure. At the same time, I'm also like you, I'm libertarian in the sense that banning certain products won't solve the issue. If anything, it will make it even worse in the sense that if you ban that product in regulated markets, you're just going to open up a kind of work because then you're just going to push bettors to gray market and unregulated operators, and they're still going to go offering those products. Really, the only way to solve this is it us, the industry, is trying to do is like a joint effort where everyone should do their part, share data, share information, and really try to identify. Because it's, again, yes, you can try to be smart, you can try to hide these type of things, but it's easy to spot when there's something is out of the ordinary. So I think if there is access to data and information, the league will be able to identify when there is something going on.
Well, all right. So two things here. Number one, I hate using the word mainstream media because it makes me sound like a far right wackadoo. But I was a member of the mainstream media for 25 years. I feel like I'm allowed to say it. They're treating this situation, the sky is falling, the end of the world. I'm guessing that you, much like me, much like most everyone else who's involved in this industry, I got an alarming amount of text and phone calls from people not attached to the industry saying, oh, you must be real busy. This broke the blood-brain barrier when it comes to the media, right? And it's being treated like this is like the first time this has ever happened. Yeah, I mean, since caveman times probably. And it's not, and on top of that, you have to be the most, biblical, upstanding, moral of characters. If somebody came to me and said, hey, Terry Rozier's going to take himself out of the game in the first quarter, I'm going to bet the unders, like not that pure of heart, right? And so this is not the first time it's happened. It's not it won't be the last time it happens, right? If somebody is
100%.
if somebody's playing a game, the risk of, tomfoolery exists. So that's number one. But I am curious about the Sport Radar, the NBA, and how it's easy to spot. Have you seen it in action? Like the easy to spotness of it?
Yeah, I think we have seen it. And again, I would say the technical service is actually a great service because it's basically a network where we all share data in real time. So, you see bets. And of course, everything is anonymized. We don't know where that bet is coming from. But it's actually the network effect is very powerful because you see all the bets coming through in real time from all the states. So it's not only a single state. And really, that network effect is very powerful because you have a million of bets coming in, and you know the statistics, you know the game, you have the predictions, so you know what is expected of a certain player. So that's where really algorithms are very powerful because once you fit all this information into the system, it's really easy to spot. And we've seen it like rotation players, so someone that is going to play only a few minutes, and you see a big spike in betting right before he comes on or after he's on court. You can see these signals very clearly.
I guess much of this at this point must be automated.
There's no way of doing this manually because now you have, like on average on a basketball game, we offer something like 800 betting markets, and you have 5-6 games going on at the same time, so it's really not humanly possible to,
of course,
monitor that in real time. This is where our and AI it's really, really powerful because you have access to millions of data points in real time and you can identify those outliers.
Another big concern that I've seen come across again in non-gambling media related work is AI and how it creates like an unfair advantage for the sports books and how it, puts bettors at a disadvantage and how the speed at which it moves, you can't compete. So speak to that a little bit. I'm guessing much like everything else that's breathlessly reported, there's some truth to it, but it's a little over the top as well. So dive into that a bit. Tell me the misconceptions
Yeah,
here.
I think AI is becoming more and more so in this industry. I think especially larger operators that have access to a lot of data points can really leverage AI. I'll say as an industry, we are still lagging behind compared to other industries because I'll say one of the biggest misconceptions and before moving into I'll say more business oriented roles, as we discussed, I came into this industry as kind of like analytics role. One of the biggest misconceptions is like when executives in our industry thinks about AI, they only think about the application. They were like, oh, build me an algorithm that classify clients or build me an algorithm that optimize risk. So if you are not an AI data practitioner, you only think about the use case. But most of the AI initiative in our industry fail because all the infrastructure behind is missing. While it's true that AI has that capability, in order to really, the algorithm is really like 5% of the job. Like 95% of the AI is, processing the data, mapping the data correctly, cleaning the data, consolidating. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions. I think there is a bit of knowledge gap, especially within the executive, I would say, layer on what is needed to unlock AI. I think that's what's missing. I think executives think about, okay, I know that AI can do this, which is true. AI can do that. So they think about that, but they don't think about, okay, what do I need to do to enable AI to do that? That's one big misconception. And I think another one, which is there's a lot of talk about AI in odds making. And this is a bit of a, I'll say, unpopular opinion. I was never a huge believer of AI in odds making, in the sense that I think AI is very powerful in risk management. It's so similar to what happened like in the financial market. It's very powerful in detecting betting patterns. It's very powerful in profiling customers. So that's where I see a strong use case for AI. But in terms of predicting if is going to have three home runs, that's not really a great use case because if you think about baseball, the game changed drastically year on year, roster changed drastically year on year. So the game dynamic is not the same. So it's very difficult to do historical analysis on a sport. So I think I'm a bit skeptical when I say, oh, our odds are AI driven. Because, as I said, I'm not a huge believer of AI in odds making. I think odds making require, there are other algorithms, there are other mathematical approaches that you can use that are, of course, very powerful. But for me, that's not the strong suit for AI when it comes to our industry. But going back to the other point you mentioned, there is definitely, I wouldn't call it unfair, but there's definitely an unbalance between the capabilities of an operator and the capability of a bettor. Is without a doubt that the operators have access to information and computer power that a regular bettor doesn't have. My argument to that, though, is that I would say a recreational bettor is aware of that, and you are aware of the fact that you are paying for the entertainment. Like you don't place your bets because you think that you're gonna win money against the operator. You place your bets because you enjoy the thrill and the entertainment of experiencing the game while you're having some money on the line. I would say why there is this imbalance, most of the customers won't mind about it as long as they're getting a good product.
I'm going to pivot for a minute. You mentioned the word entertainment. I came across something that you wrote online about reading and how people just aren't reading the way they used to and how it's short-circuiting our brains, basically. Tell me a little bit about this because I believe it too. I'm a big believer in this.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm a parent, so actually that's also worries me. I think that's true. I mean,
Right.
reading and writing are getting in and risk, I would say, with AI becoming endemic. So I think, and actually, I connecting your previous question, another misconception about AI, and I think that's why that's an important, I would say, effort and something that I try with my background to talk about it is you hear in the media talking about democratizing AI. Like basically the media wanna sounds like everyone can use AI and everyone should use AI and everyone should do that without any problem. I think that's misleading because there are certain competences and certain skills that you must have in order to use AI proficiently. I believe there are certain things that cannot be democratized. Like if you want to be like a surgeon, you need to study 10 years in medical school. So I think AI is the same. I think similar to what I mentioned about executive, I think people think about the AI usage. Like it's like, okay, I'm gonna ask ChatGPT to read this for me. Or I'm gonna ask ChatGPT to write this for me. But if you don't understand what data is being fed into that or what algorithm has been used, then you won't be able to understand if the output is really what you want. So for me, that's the type of education that I try to do with my kids, and in general, I think the society should be trying to do. I think really everyone should understand what's behind the curtain. Like if you ask AI, okay, can you write this? Then you should try to understand, okay, what source has been used.
How old are your kids?
9 and 7.
All right, so they're natives to this. They're going to be growing up with
Correct.
it, right? Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
and it's a challenge. I mean, my oldest is 16, smart kid, not probably too smart, but not academically inclined, getting good grades, and he's like AI, AI, AI. He's just playing the game, and I hope his teachers aren't listening. But he's just playing the game. But the point you make, I think, is spot on when it comes to AI. And that, right, if you don't know what it is it's doing. I mean, so here I teach some college classes. I'm going to be teaching a class next semester, basic journalism, how to write a news article, how to write a press release, all this stuff. And I know that AI can do the work for the kids. I'm putting on the syllabus. I was working on this morning. Don't bother bringing your computer to class. Notebook and pens, because we're going to learn how to do this by hand the way it was done 100 years ago. And then once you know how to do it, go use as much AI as you want. But at least you'll know what it should look like and what you want it to be. And with your kids also, another thing I came across of yours, which is fascinating, is and I'm going to put words in your mouth. Correct me if I'm wrong. You think there's an overdose of people growing up too fast?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, in general, I think it's difficult now to limit this, but I'll say, I think now the exposure to social media and media in general, it's really putting, I would say, this new generation at risk. And again, even the pressure, it's not easy. I think now they are exposed to a pressure that even my generation, like we didn't have growing up. And it's not easy, like to when you're like 9 years old. And I give you like an example. So it's like, so my donor has been asking me forever now to uh, go on YouTube and have like a YouTube account, and I try to educate her in the sense that once you're out there, I'll say, unfortunately, social media bring out the worst out of people. I think when you are out there, the majority of people are just gonna try and come after you. They're not gonna say, "Oh, actually, I like what you write." So I think there is a lot of hate out there. So when you're like very young and you don't understand that because you're at 9 years old and you're genuine and maybe you want to put out there like a dance or whatever, like you maybe like a creative person and you want to draw something, and then you see people writing like nasty thing about a 9 years old. First of all, it's demoralizing as a human, but then it's difficult for them to cope because they don't understand. Like, I was just trying to be creative and trying to share something that definitely worries me. And yeah, it's one of the things that I think we as a society, we should really and reconnecting to the AI. And, there's been, couple of years ago about Facebook. It bothers me as well that especially the technical leaders and all the leaders of these companies don't really make this a priority. And I know what AI can do, and AI could really filter out a speech, could really filter out fake information. Like AI can do that, but they just don't make it a priority because, and again, it's demoralizing. But eight cell, and the more polarizing your opinion is, the more viewership you'll have and the more followers you have. And again, without going into politics, but you know where I'm getting.
Well, right. No, I mean, to people who are just listening and not viewing this podcast, my head is nodding. I can't nod any physically. My head cannot go any further. But no, I mean, without getting into politics, I'll get into politics because it's not even getting into politics. It's about getting into social media and speech. In that, I think to the average person now in America, you're led to believe that everybody is either a complete and utter right-wing lunatic or a complete and utter left-wing lunatic. Because if you post something that's ultra right-wing or ultra left-wing, you will get clicks and action and retweets and blah, 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 blah. The algorithm will love you. If I put a post out there on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and say, I love being a moderate, I will get zero engagement. I will get buried. And so, yeah, we're feeding the wrong thing. And we've created this monster. And my hope genuinely is that our children, right? My kids are 16, 14, and 11. You're, same generation as your kids, is that they grow up in this world and realize it for what it is. I'm hoping that the natives, understand all this, but I think I might be putting too much hope in the future as well.
We'll see. But understand, I think, and you're right. I think definitely our leadership, the tech giants, in my opinion, that I think they could do more.
You live in New York City, in Manhattan, is that correct?
Yeah.
So
New York, yes.
I'm sure you do well for yourself. I'm sure your kids have a very nice life. Compared to your 9-year-old year, your 7-year-old year in Sicily, what do you think is a better environment?
And again, maybe I'm nostalgic. I think I definitely long for my kids to what I had growing up, because I think what they're really missing is just that sense of community. And for me, when I was again growing up, I grew up in a very religious family. But for me, that was great because really going to church was the only place where I would go there, play football, spend time with my friends, and I couldn't wait to be there. So I think that human connection is now getting lost. But then I see the fun that they have online because they play online and you have all this music, you have all these exciting games, exciting experience. I think they now prioritize the digital world to the real world, which again is just a reflection of times. But if I do the comparison, I think they're missing something because yes, it's true. You play online with your friends, but at the end of the day, you have an avatar representing you. So I think nothing will replace that human interaction.
Have you been back to Sicily and your hometown with your children?
I tried to go back at least once a year. My parents are still there. It's a dying lifestyle. I think, unfortunately, especially in the Sicily, is not a rich region of Italy. Most of my friends moved to the north of the country, and it's a bit sad for me to see that type of lifestyle kind of dying out all the time. But
all right.
I still try to bring the kids there. So
yeah. It's time for the most important question of the podcast. Again, I live in Jersey. I'm a 50-minute train ride to middle of Manhattan. You're from Sicily. You're from Italy. So give me some Italian spots that are your go-tos. How are we're doing all right with the Italian food here in Jersey and New York?
Yes, I have to say, actually, yes, New York is definitely one of the best places. My favorite is Felice is in Brooklyn.
Okay.
Felice is one of my favorite. Then you have the usual, of course, Carbone and Torrisi are if you can get a table.
Right.
But yeah, Felice is my go-to place.
Did you catch that gene? Do you have that?
I don't, but my wife, she's also Italian, so she's a great cook. So,
right, that's good.
She tries, and she's trying to teach now to our daughters.
It's very hard for people who don't live in the New York, New Jersey area to understand the impact of Italian culture here. My favorite story about all this is my wife, who's not Italian, grew up, the family was mostly Irish. She was dating a fella before me, an Italian guy. And they were dating, I think they dated for about a year, a little over a year. And she said that she was done with the relationship and she was looking to get out of it. And, the one thing that kept holding her back was Sunday dinner at his grandmother's.
Yes, yes. And by the way, speaking of things that I'm also missing is, because I'm an immigrant, so, I left Italy when now almost 20 years. That's another thing that I miss for my kids because, I grew up in a very, large traditional family. So as you correctly pointed out, on Sunday would be lunch to my grandmother house with all my uncle, aunts, cousins. So I think for my kids, being away from the family is something they're missing out.
You and everybody else, honestly,
But if you have that, I can see why that would be a strong selling point.
Yep, absolutely. All right, I'm going to ask you what amounts to probably a last question, and honestly, it's the most unfair question you could ask anyone in this industry because the correct answer is I have no freaking idea, but I'll try it anyway. 5 years from now, the American sports betting market, what does it look like? Prediction markets, legalized sports betting, the prop betting, all of it. Like what if you could umbrella it all, what do you expect?
Yeah, I expect prop betting to keep growing. And I think in 5 years from now, it's already almost at 40%. I think in 5 years from now, prop betting will be the majority of especially for in play. I think prop market is going to dominate in 5 years from now, just because it ties perfectly with the media narrative. It ties perfectly with the way you consume the game. So yeah, I think player props will be the biggest segment when it comes to sports betting. I also, and again, this is an unpopular opinion, I see a world where prediction market and bookmaker, I don't think the two things are mutually exclusive. I think prediction markets cater to a different audience. I think more, I would say, financial savvy and more sharp type of trading experience rather than recreational experience. So I can see the prediction markets and bookmakers both having different shares of the pie, that for sure. Same game parlay, which is something that we didn't touch upon, but I think is now also becoming the primary way of consuming betting product. I think young generation love the idea of building their own narrative because you're watching the game and I was like, I really think Luka Doncic is going to score 40 points and he's going to do this and he's going to do that. So the way you're thinking it is actually mirroring the way you build the bets. So I think props SGP will be the dominant driver for the next 5 years. And prediction markets are here to stay. I think there are gaps in the regulation that needs to be wrinkled, that need to be sorted out. But if you take the UK as an example, you have a betting exchange and you have bookmakers, and it's been like that for many years. So I think eventually we'll reach that point.
I tend to agree. We'll wait and see what the courts have to say, which is,
There's going to be a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of legal battles over the next 5 years, but I think eventually the industry will adjust and find that balance.
Yeah. All right. Well, Francesco, thank you so much for joining us. I also want to say, speaking on behalf of my wife, we accept the future invitation to your house for dinner with your wife's cooking. And we look forward to seeing what you're doing in the future. And that's it, man. Francesco, again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Jeff. It was a pleasure.
The Business of Betting podcast is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. 4 out of the top 5 U.S. operators personalize player experiences with Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/businessofbetting. And if you like what you see, you will get your first month free.